Hello, it's Melinda from Scrapbookingncraft. How you all going today? So this is the sped up version of the live Facebook class I did in December 2023 using some of our new release products. I'm just showing you there the black card embellishment of the girl with the easel that we're going to use, a couple of our new stencils, and we're going to use a couple of napkins. So I picked this floral napkin and that's where I've drawn my colours from. And I really like this. Sorry for what I said when I was. It says Hangry. But I'm actually going to be very cheeky and make arty out of it. So it has the words A-R-T, sorry, A-R-Y, and then I'm going to butcher the word T out of it. So stay tuned to see how you can use that napkin. I love that saying. Usually I don't buy a lot of saying napkins to put in our range, but that one I particularly liked and thought it had potential. So I'm going to be placing the black girl with her artist easel on the bottom right hand side of the page. So just sort of explaining here what colours I am going to be using. They're all Dina Wakley colours, and look, they're sitting on my desk so I can go through the colours. Dina Wakley Lime, Dina Wakley Sedona. Now Dina Wakley Cheddar would have been a better match, but I couldn't find my cheddar. It ran away. Dina Wakley Blushing, again, not a perfect match, but it was the best I had. And Dina Wakley Lapis, and I also used Dina Wakley White as well. So I've pre-gessoed my page, only because I work in an altered book and it had pictures and text. So I gave it a couple of coats of gesso just to give me a nice white surface to start with. So usually when I have 4 colours, and as I pick the colours out of the napkins, the colours are growing on me. The more I look at the page, it's growing on me. But this one did go through a bit of an ugly stage. So when I'm picking 4 colours, and I tend to start with the lightest colour first, and then build up to a darker colour, and then a darker colour, and then the more intense colour, and only add that in a small amount on the page. So I love to finger paint in my art journals. It A, spreads the paint really, really thin. B, it tends to connect yourself more with your journal because you're getting your fingers dirty. And C, I don't have to wash a paintbrush. Well, I had to get the paint out of the paint pot with a paintbrush, so I had to wash one. But I don't know, it's something about finger painting. 90% of my art journal pages, I do finger paint. But if you don't want to finger paint, use a brush, use a scrape, use an old credit card to scrape your paint across, use a brayer, use anything to get paint on your page. So going in and adding the blue at this stage, I was sort of rethinking my decision of adding the dark blue in. But because it was in the napkin, I thought, well, if that person liked the colours and they went together. Oh, sorry, this is the Sedona. I was rethinking the darkness of it. Just because usually I will use colours that are in the same tonal value. So all sort of lighty colours, all sort of darky colours, or all sort of mid-tony colours. I wouldn't go with like a lime, which is quite a light colour, and then use a lapis. But as I said, the page is growing on me. Art journaling is all about play. Here goes the lapis. Really rethinking the colour choice at the moment. But I do fix it in the end. So art journaling for me, and for a lot of people, should be about the play, should be about the time you take out of your day away from your husband, your kids, your job, your whatevers, to sit down and play and enjoy. If you get to the end, an art journaling is a journey, not a destination. And that's what I think a lot of people sort of mislay or misinterpret, that every page has to be beautiful, every page has to be a work of art. You're not putting your art journal in the Louvre. That's a museum in France, for anyone that didn't know. So you're not having your art journal on display. It can be a very personal piece, and you put it in your book and you never show anyone. Yes, mine go all over the world on YouTube, but that's my choice. So here I'm doing some reverse stenciling. So if you've never heard of reverse stenciling before, basically usually you use a stencil and you put your stencil on a bit of paper and you put ink or paint through the little holes on the stencil. But this is what we call reverse stenciling. So if you've got, like me, really bold blue on your page and you want to tone it down, this is a great way to tone it down. And I made an oopsie then, so I had to put blue paint back on. I rubbed too hard and rubbed the white paint, the blue paint, and the gesso off. Don't know how I managed that. If I wanted to do that, I wouldn't be able to do it. So you basically put a thin layer of paint over where you want your stenciling while the paint is still wet, and that's a very important thing. You grab your stencil, place your stencil over the wet paint, grab a wet baby wipe or a wet piece of paper towel. Baby wipes work best. Don't want your baby wipe to be too wet or too dry, sort of in between. and you're wiping the paint out of the holes in the stencil. And what it does is it leaves the paint behind that's hiding under the stencil plastic. And this also allows you to get a second look from your stencil as well. So you're sort of getting two different designs. So you're sort of using your stencil as a stamp, I suppose. This technique works best with lacy or holey stencils. So the more cuts, the more holes in the stencil and the less stencil plastic, the better this technique works. Does that make sense? Clear as mud, right? Yes. So I was just showing you there before another stencil. It would work just as well, but there's a bit more plastic left on the design. So when I'm putting my white paint on, I am going a bit beyond the blue paint that I'm putting the stencil over. And if I stencil on one part of the blue on my page and there's a second blob of blue somewhere else, I will make sure I stencil on that part as well. And this little stencil is what we call a repeating stencil, so it's very easy to keep lining it up over and over again to cover a larger area, even though it's only a small 6x4 inch stencil. A lot of our small 6x4 stencils that are available on our website are repeating designs so that easily can be lined up and used over and over again. Don't you love the look of that? So to get that look on your stencil, I would have to design the stencil in a different way, and you'd have little cut marks or little breaks in that lattice work to get that particular design on your page. But this is an easy way to do it. So have a look in your stencil stash, or have a look on the website for the more lacier stencils or holier stencils, and have a go at the reverse stenciling technique. It's really cool. So now I grab out the paper napkin. So paper napkins are also sold on our website, Scrapbookingncraft. Paper napkins are fantastic to use in your artwork. Just you need to remove the white backings from the napkin. And sometimes there's two to remove, sometimes there's one. What I tend to do is remove one, place my napkin over something that's got a bit of text in it. If you can just see the text, it's got enough layers removed off it. If the text is a bit cloudy still, then you need to remove a bit more of the napkin. So I'm doing some water cutting with the napkin. So I'm grabbing a clean paintbrush, dipping it in water, tracing around the little flowers that I'd like to use, and gently pulling apart. When you add water to napkins, they become very fragile. So when I'm referring to napkins, I'm referring to paper napkins, of course, that we sell on our website, but collage tissue, rice paper, any of those thinner type papers and tissue paper, these same steps and techniques will work for any of those. So whether it's Stamperia, Scrap FX is a company that's just closed down, but you might have those in your stash. Who else makes rice paper? I have no idea. But the thinner papers and the paper napkins are fantastic to give a try. My daughter sells them on our website. So we sell them in a pack of 2. They start at 75 cents, so it's a great way to get some really cool stuff for your art journals. So just cutting out 3 of those main orange and green flowers. The reason that I like water cutting my designs out is it makes the edges fuzzy. It might be a bit hard to see in the picture, but the fuzziness of the edge will disappear better onto your page than a hard cut edge. Yes, sometimes I do, and I will hard cut the edges. I'll do that for the title a bit later on, but in this case, because I wanted the flowers to sort of sink into the page, I wanted to water cut them. The thing with these type of papers, as they're really thin, you need to use a really thin adhesive. So acrylic matte medium or Mod Podge. Don't particularly like Mod Podge, leaves your page a bit shiny, but if you've got it, use it. I'd water down Mod Podge just a little bit. So matte medium is a very liquid glue, so a very runny glue, and it works really well. I wouldn't use a gel medium, so look for one that says matte medium. Matte obviously is non-glossy, so there are glossy versions as well. So you want to put a big blob on your page under where your napkin's going to go, and then you want to put a good coat on the top of the napkin. When you're doing it on the top of the napkin, you want to have lots on your brush, and you want to start from the middle point and brush out like around a clock. So start in the middle where the hands would be, in the middle of the hands, and brush out. This will help brush out any bubbles or any creases. The napkins do add a bit of texture, and you will get creases because they're so thin and flimsy to work with, but that adds a bit of texture to your book, and a bit of interest to your layout. So don't worry, you will get a few little wrinkles. Rice paper and collage paper are a bit more forgiving because they're a little thicker. But if you can master napkins, you can master any of those things. So it does take a bit of time for the matte medium to work. And the reason we seal over the top of the napkin is A, it helps the napkin be embedded into your art journal. That's why we put adhesive underneath and we put adhesive over top, the matte medium. What it also does is a matte medium puts a barrier over the top of your napkin. So if you were to apply some ink or some paint on top of the napkin and have an oopsie or have a accident on your page, you are very quickly able to remove that ink or paint nearly entirely from on top of the napkin. If you didn't put the matte medium on top of the napkin, it would soak into the napkin and you would have no chance of removing it. So here I decided to use the stencil in its traditional way and with some archival ink. The reason I'm using archival ink is I prefer archival ink in my art journal because I don't know what comes next, and archival ink is waterproof and I don't have to worry about if I want to add any watery things on top. It's a waterproof ink, but there's no reason why you can't use distress oxides, distress inks. Just bear in mind they are water soluble, so be careful what comes next on your art journal page. I went a bit crazy with the stenciling, probably should have dialed it back a little, but I was having fun. So the ink, the advantage of putting the ink through, I could line up the stencil again and sort of, it was a bit more of a subtle look. So the stencil was protecting the background and then I was putting the ink through the hole, so it was sort of giving you a different look again with the stencil. So now it's time to work with our second napkin, and this is where I will use the scissors to cut the napkin up. So all the napkins come folded in 4. So I just want one panel. So often you get 8 images of the one thing. So I've got 8 of these sayings, so I can use them again and again. So this time I am cutting them up into smaller pieces and I am leaving the white layers on the back. Now if you want to cut your napkin with scissors, leave the white layers on until you finish cutting out. It's a lot easier than trying to cut the flimsy napkin top. So yes, I remove layers first before sometimes, and no, I don't for other times. So here I'm doing a bit of creativeness, and I'm actually going to glue these napkins to a piece of photocopy or printer paper. The reason for that is napkins are very translucent. So when you see white on a napkin, say for example the background behind sorry for is white, so that's almost going to disappear, and if I put it onto a busy part of my page, it's going to get lost and you're going to lose a lot of that detail. So the napkins we stuck directly on our page, if you look closer in the close photos at the end, you can subtly see some of the background colours coming through. That's fine, that's the look I wanted for there. This title I wanted to stand out and be a focal point, so I'm just using the same techniques of the matte gel medium on the printer paper, napkin on top, matte gel medium on top of the printer paper, on top of the napkin, and sticking it to the printer paper. And I've cut up the H and I'm just doing a T. So the title ends up saying, sorry for what I said when I was arty. Possibly the correct spelling could have been arting, but I couldn't work out how to make an ing. So it was arty it is. And here I'm just adding some blue paint because I want to fussy cut that T out that I made, mount it on a blue square so then it matches the A and the R and the T. Sometimes I have brilliant ideas, sometimes I don't have ideas, and I know the word arty is spelt incorrectly there, and that was pointed out in the live, but I'm going to cut it up so it don't really matter. Anyway, so bringing our page back in, so now we go and fussy cut out the letters. I end up cutting the A out and very close to the blue, and then I decide I want a white border around it. That's okay. The R and the Y I cut with the white border. The A I just mount on another scrap of paper and give it its own white border. So here I'm fussy cutting out the T. I'm going to mount it on the blue and then going to cut out a wonky looking square And I believe I also mount it on a little bit of white as well, so it matches the letters. So a bit of cutting and fussing and fussy cutting. Bit of fussing around to make the letters I want, but it was a bit of fun. Yes, I could have got stickers out of my stash and used the word arting, but I did want to show you how to manipulate napkins in a different way. So don't see the napkin and go, okay, I don't think I'd use on my art journal page. Sorry for what I said when I was hangry. You could put a picture of some sort of food on it or something, but feel free to cut things up, to change things around. You can use some of these sayings with a combination of sticker letters. There's so many possibilities that you can do with paper napkins or with any shapes like that. So I often even cut up my own chipboard, my own black cutouts, if the cutout is not exactly what I want to use on my page. Even though I could go back to my machine and cut the one I want, often I just cut up the ones that I make for sale into a different version, or a different piece that I want to use if I want to use it in a different way. So just gluing that down. So because this napkin is now glued to some white photocopy paper, I'm just using a good old standard craft glue. I think that's Art Deco all-purpose art glue by Couture Creations, or any sort of good craft glue that you use to glue heavier things down works as well. So you don't want to just use a glue stick. Because you are gluing over paint and napkin and roughness in your art journal, you do need that sort of stronger crafty glue, whatever you use for craft glue. Art glitter glue works really well. They're the two that I like. So here I'm thinking a little. Then I decide my page needs a border. I border 90% of my pages, whether it's big and elaborate or whether it's subtle like this. Just wanted to put a bit of blue around the page because I felt the page was never ending to my eyes. My eyes kept wandering off the page and wondering what's next. When you put a border on the page, your eye sort of stops at the border and then comes back into the page to look around a bit more. Well, that's what my brain thinks anyway. Sometimes my brain is a very interesting place to be. So sometimes I do a squiggly border. This time it was just a little bit of paint, and in some places the paint is thicker than others. That was sort of the look I was going for. So just positioning my black die cut, you'll see that come in and out of the shot all the time. My focal image gets placed there. It doesn't get stuck to the end. I felt that top sort of right hand side was a bit lacking. It's sort of, the black die cut filled the bottom right hand side. All the title filled the left hand side. Majority of the time I do double pages. I'm just happier doing double pages. I very rarely do a single page. I'm a bit like that. I like things to match in my journal so the two pages match. I don't know. See, I told you my brain's a weird place to be. So I decided to add a few more subtle flowers up in that top right hand side, just to look like there was a cluster of flowers. And some of them get a little lost because it's quite a darkness up there with the blue paint. But they're subtle, and that was the sort of look I was going for. So there's something there, but there's not something there that's really bright like the black die cut down the bottom or like the words on the left hand side of the page. Does that make sense? Clear as mud, right? So drying that off again. So gluing down my focal image. Now these black images or black cardstock images can be reversed. That you may find if you do flip it over to, when you take it out of the package, it's showing obviously the right side. So this artist is looking to the left. If you wanted her to look to the right, you can certainly use her backwards. There may be a few little burn marks or scorch marks because these are laser cut on the reverse side, but a little bit of black gesso, a little bit of black ink will clean those marks up. They're a bit more visible on the white die cuts we do or the white laser cuts we do. The black, you almost can't see them. So they are, 99% of our shades are reversible, whether they're chipboard, black or white. Just obviously don't reverse the words because then you won't see what they are. Then I decided my title needed a bit of defining. So often when I stick things onto my art journal page, I trace around them with a black paint pen, or this time I picked a black Uniwall Eye fine liner, and just doing a scribbly border on the edge of the word pieces, but actually on my journal. So it makes them stand out. Makes them look like they're not just been stuck there. The tracing around of it, whether it's black, whether it's white, whether it's a colour, actually helps to anchor those pieces to your page. And they don't look like they've just been stuck there, if that makes sense, even though they've been stuck there. I don't have to do it on the black die cut, and I'm loving a very focal black die cut with a very colourful page. That contrast seems to just work really, really well with the black silhouette and colourful page. So this page is just about done. I do have some photos and some close-ups at the end for you to have a look at if you want some more detail. And if you want to follow along in a more lengthy version of this video, the video before this one or after this one on the YouTube channel will have the real-time class so you can follow along. All the products will be listed in the description box below, and they're all available on our website. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.